And for those that are new to BDPA, we're a nonprofit organization, mostly focused on exposure. So exposing our community to different areas of um, technical advancements, how to potentially grow in their fields, different fields they could maybe hop into, and in just general, just raising awareness, bridging the gap, and trying to move towards equity across the community. So, with that, some of the main areas that we are focused in is our STEM program. So that is our program for kids and college students. So there's different programs for um, web development, data science, IT research, I think cloud. I forget what the name of the group is, but learning about cloud technologies. And there probably are some other ones. Oh, esports is something that we're diving a bit more into this year as well. So these are areas where different students can get exposure and get some hands-on skills that they can apply to, when they advance into college, past college, and even some of these groups are available to professionals as well. So with a lot of these groups in the STEM program, this is to prepare them for the competitions that happen at the national conference this year. The national conference is in August and here in Atlanta. I probably should write down the dates because I never remember the dates. But it's like mid-August that the conference is happening.
I bet you Victor knows.
Yep.
17th through 19th.
There you go. Thanks, Victor. So August 17th through 19th is the conference, and this will be our second time being in person again since everything the last couple of years. So we hope to see you there. If you're interested in volunteering, not volunteering. If you're interested in registering, I'll be dropping the link to the conference site. And if you're interested in volunteering for the conference, you can always connect with me or Victor, and we can help you out with next steps on how to get more plugged in. So that's kind of brief on the STEM program and the conference. In addition to other programming that we have is you could say like our monthly series where with the help of Matrix, we've been able to have content like speakers coming out and ways to stay engaged into the community. So I think with that, I'll hand it over to John to introduce our speaker.
Okay, great. Yep. Thank you, Shanika. So this year, our theme for our professional group has been on leadership. And there's just a whole host of ways and areas to talk about leadership. One of the areas that's just been right in front of a lot of leaders the last couple of years is all of a sudden we're leading remote teams. This is very different for a lot of people. And it continually changes too, right? As we, have, I don't know if you saw this, there was like a little tiny blurb the other day from the Biden administration that the pandemic is essentially over. Someone had to tell me that. I didn't see it, but anyway, so I think we're all seeing and hearing a little bit of like a return to the office, whether it's all or partial or in some cases not at all either, just remaining remote. So, but those are changes. I mean, those are big changes for leaders to continue to be effective with their teams. So it's a great topic, very, very pertinent, right now. So we're fortunate to have Steve Miles with us from Georgia Environmental Protection Group, and he's graciously offered to just kind of share his lessons learned through this journey the last couple of years, and the stages of having a remote team, leading the remote team, focusing on effectiveness and engagement, and all of that, all these like very challenging things. So he's a Celtics fan though. I'm just trying to like get over that a little bit here. But anyways, a very warm BDPA Atlanta welcome to Steve Miles. So thanks for being with us. And I'm going to flip it over to you, Steve.
All right. Thank you so much for the introduction. And yes, diehard Celtics fan. We'll see if we can bring home that trophy this year, since we got put out and a little bit of disappointing performance last year, but we lost to a very good team, powerhouse team of the Warriors. But thank you all again for the invitation and the opportunity to speak with you a little bit today about some of my experiences and, transitioning and navigating the pandemic as we all have. Just a little bit about me. I've been with Georgia Environmental Protection Division for about 4 years, but I've been in the public sector for over 20 years. I've worked in the university system, local government, and with the state. So you can imagine being in the public sector. Remote work is not something that's a very familiar term at all. And so we were all more or less caught off guard a good little bit, and me, myself included, because I've always worked in a traditional in-office environment. So I prepared some slides and some information to share with you today. And in the midst of sharing some of this best practices and any information I've gathered, I'll share some of my personal experiences going through that transition. And you'll be able to tell when I'm speaking from my own personal experience, because there's a lot of things that happen that were just, you can't script it. It was some things that you had to do the best you could, and you made the best of that situation with the teams that you had. So if I can, let me see if I can share my screen here. Okay, and let me know, please, if you can see that screen well. Okay, thank you.
Looking all right.
All right, so navigating the new normal, leading, remote teams. Some don't like that term, new normal. It gives some folks anxiety. But the thing about it is truly something that has normalized. There's not anything that we can do to go back beyond 2020 anymore. A lot of lessons learned, a lot of things that were very good for us as well. So I do embrace that term, new normal. All right, so just a little bit of some of the order of what we'll do in the presentation, and I'll give you a nice little introduction. We'll talk about some of the challenges of remote leadership. We'll talk about building trust and collaboration. We'll talk about maintaining productivity and engagement. I know that should be something that's a hot topic for everyone to listen to. And then we'll talk about something that I particularly enjoy with my role as being the Director of Information Technology and tools for remote leadership. Okay. So with the rise of telecommunicating and virtual workspaces, managing teams that are geographically dispersed, it's become increasingly common to us after the pandemic. The pandemic forced us to shift our way of thinking and things that were comfortable to us. So this evening, we'll discuss some key factors that contribute to successful leadership of remote teams. And that includes communication, trust, productivity, and technology, as well as some challenges like how do you build trust and collaboration amongst teams? How do you maintain productivity and engagement in these virtual work environments? So I'll share some of my experiences of leading a remote team during the pandemic and point out a few best practices that I've gained to lead us beyond that. So as I begin, I'd like to share something I found on the internet from Forbes and what they consider to be the perfect remote team worker. A remote team worker that is perfect, they're self-aware, they're self-motivated, they're agile, they're passionate about people, and they can pump themselves up and get themselves inspired because they're self-aware and they go after their own aspirations. They're flexible in when, where, and how they work. They don't let the little things get to them. In addition to these qualities, successful remote employees should be communicative, assertive, organized, motivated and responsible, collaborative, resourceful, and not afraid to ask for help. They're also adaptable and nimble. They should also achieve work-life balance, take short breaks, make themselves accessible to their team, and have personal accountability. Now, I don't know about you all, but I have no one on that team that fits that description. And I don't think any of us do. If you do, raise your hand, because I have some positions I have to fill. So, that's something that Forbes considers. But that's the perfect worker for the perfect situation, right? Well, unfortunately, leaders were faced with the reality of transforming traditional office employees and teams into something, or even rather a version of what Forbes considers to be perfect, and do it quickly. Leaders navigated how to establish a new remote work landscape while supporting employees and their concerns. I recall some of the employees' concerns were they were just under immense stress about, the global health crisis, economic uncertainty, and just the civil or social unrest. A lot of them, they were just in shock from the shutdown. Some felt anxious or resentful of the fact that they were going to be asked to return to the office, or from just the uncertainty if they would be asked to do so. So people wanted to feel safe and they wanted to be cared for. So my obligation as a leader was to demonstrate my commitment to them. To move forward, our team members were allowed to admit how they were feeling, and were given a safe space to open up about their anxieties. So just to reflect a little bit more on our experience, our organization decided to take a survey to check the temperature of our employees, to find out just those things. What were their main concerns? What was giving them anxiety? So we captured that feedback by just them sending out a survey to the team and giving them some time to think about what their responses needed to be, and encourage them to be very open and honest about what they will share with us. By doing that, it gave us an opportunity to develop and create guidance and action plans that were unique for each department, but also had a strategy and goals and objectives to accomplish for the entire organization. So as an organization, we created priorities that focused on the most important deliverables of our jobs, which allowed us to move forward with flexibility in mind. And that flexibility is one of the things that we received as feedback from employees that they were so thankful and appreciative of the flexibility that the agency would award them. Now, one thing that we also had to do as a result of that survey was to figure out which jobs were able to be done in a remote capacity, which ones required someone to actually be in the office, and then which ones could be considered for a hybrid work model. So that was, of course, unique to each department, that business unit and supervisor and leaders that were in the organization. So we took time to meet with our employees, go through their job descriptions, go through their job functions, and develop an idea and a plan to put in action so that we would not create an environment where there was resentment for people who selected or were hired for particular jobs that were not able to be remote. We wanted to make sure that landscape was an even playing field. So now let's talk about some of the challenges. So remote work offers numerous benefits for employees, including greater flexibility, reduced commuting time, which was my favorite, and increased autonomy. However, it presents some significant challenges, such as the need for effective communication. It also presented opportunities for or potential isolation and burnout of employees, and then just the difficulty of maintaining team cohesion. To overcome these challenges, leaders must be proactive in communicating with their remote teams. They must provide consistent feedback and support, and foster a culture of collaboration and inclusivity. This may require a shift in leadership style, as well as the adoption of new tools and technologies that enable remote work to be done effectively and efficiently. Now, let's talk a little bit about something I mentioned earlier, myself not really being being in a traditional in-office environment and not really having the experience working in remote capacity. My leadership style definitely was grown in, supported, and fostered into a in office. So I really had to do some research on my own. We had some information that was provided by the organization to help us come up with different ideas and different best practices to apply to our leadership style. But it really did demand that I shift that style into something that I was not very familiar with and honestly not very comfortable with in the very beginning. So one of the things I had to do was work on the communication piece. So one of the things that was a marker for myself and my leadership team was to establish expectations and the mode of communication. How frequently were we going to communicate in the cadence so that we could truly stay connected? In doing that, you can ask yourself a few questions to create and set those expectations. Questions like, should people always include their entire team? Must the recipient always acknowledge every message? And in which channels of communications will we use? So one thing that our director talked about in the very beginning of shifting to the remote work was sending out regular communication so that there's no misunderstanding of where the organization is, our posture, and what we're supporting. He provided those on a regular basis, at least as information was available to us. But if there was no change in information, he still provided communication to us on a regular basis. He also empowered us as department leaders to target our specific guidance and to our staff. So you had staff, again, that was remote, hybrid, and then some that had to be in office. So we had the ability and flexibility to target our communications so it could be fitting for those particular roles. I will say one of the very good gains that we were able to actualize during the transition was establishing one-on-one meetings with our direct reports, just to know how they're doing. It also awarded an opportunity for us to get to know our team members personally, particularly for those who may not have been with the organization in person and in transition to remote. We're talking about people who were onboarded in a remote capacity. You didn't get a chance to have that water cooler talk with them. So it was important to establish that one-on-one just to develop that working relationship. One of the things I encourage my leadership team and myself to be accountable for is just to keep those one-on-one meetings and don't cancel them. We view it as your time or the team's time with you as a leader. And during that time, to get to know that your employee, you solicit genuine interaction by asking questions, open-ended questions like, what's on your mind versus how are you doing today? This simple activity can help you be mindful of the risk to staff, of them feeling not part of the team or part of the organization's success, or just experiencing general thoughts and feelings of isolation. I find that in this role of being a remote leader, empathy is now a must-have skill. Thinking back about some of the experiences I had with my staff, it was important that we created some health check-ins. I do recall an employee who lived alone, didn't really have a lot of family in the area. And when that transition to working remote took place, well, he started to feel very isolated. A lot of his social interaction came in the form of coming to work. You know, he came down and spent time in other coworkers' offices and just generally seeing people. Well, in that remote capacity, he was truly isolated, particularly during the shutdown. So I reached out to him after just kind of noticing a change in behavior. You know, he wasn't as talkative in the meetings and didn't contribute as much as he normally did when we were in office capacity. So it created some health check-ins for him just to say, hey, what's going on today? Not to talk about work, not necessarily to talk about work unless that was something he wanted, but otherwise just to check in to see just how he's doing. Talk about whatever's on his mind. If it was music, we talked about music. If it was sports, we talked about sports. If it was talking about food, then we talked about that. So creating those health check-ins helps you stay engaged with your team members, helps you also get to know them, but it also helps you mitigate some of those risks that can come about from a sudden change from in office to remote. Some of my leadership and managers and other colleagues have created daily check-ins or daily touch points for their staff. And this is not an effort to micromanage. It's an effort just to stay engaged and create a good fluid communication plan between the leader or the supervisor and the staff and what they were doing.
Steve,
We also
yes. Could I
yes.
ask you on that? I struggle with this sometime to know, do you follow the same plan for every employee, like on the cadence of a one-on-one, and whether or not you maybe skip a one-on-one? Like I have a tendency, and maybe this is not right, and it's a good eye-opener for me, like I will give of grace is the right term, but like a little bit of leeway to like my people that are very tenured, very senior level people. And I'll say, hey, if you want to skip today, I'll give you that time back. You probably have more things to do, but it's kind of, maybe they view that in a way, well, is this time am I not valuable to you, right, John? So yeah, so it's a good thing. But do you shift that, like, or slant that, like for more junior people or newer people to the organization, where you're more rigid with keeping the one-on-ones?
So I think the response I would say is keeping in mind flexibility. That word, we talked about that earlier, about being extremely flexible and how staff would appreciate that. So to answer your question, everyone has that same opportunity. I find that they enjoy that opportunity, at least it being scheduled. Now, given being flexible, if there's nothing to really discuss or things to touch on, and they opt to want to cancel that meeting, I allow them that respect to say, you can cancel the meeting, but I'm going to keep it as an open space for you. But if there's things we don't really need to talk about, or we've had a lot of interaction and engagement, let's say through the week, then there's probably not much to talk about from a work perspective, but maybe something on a personal perspective. So I do think that flexibility can be applied there, and that you can give them that opportunity to cancel that meeting if they just don't see a value in it for that day. But be mindful that if you start to see them cancel it more often, there's something that you may need to do there to keep that engagement going.
Yeah, don't you think like a lot of things in life, it's like half art and half science, so like you like trust like your gut, you're like, if you feel something, it might be there, and then you take action on those things. Where if, like you said, like if someone's canceling, this is the third time they've canceled or whatever, right, okay, I'm starting to wonder.
See a pattern here. I need to address something. Something's happening there, and we need to put some attention to it. So absolutely, there is an art and a science to these things, I believe. A lot of things that you can teach, and a lot of things you just have to use your tuning fork, is what I call it. Use your tuning fork to figure out. Absolutely. Yeah. Cool. Very good question, though. Very good.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, Stephen, I do have a question in regards to
absolutely. Go ahead.
I've been fortunate enough to be able to I've always worked remote, and I have individuals that work under me that are globally remote and in the office. And since this transition has come up that they're now working remotely as well, mm-hmm, it comes to a point where you have you had individuals who had pushback from productivity a standpoint, where they feel that now you're looking at them differently because they're working remotely, and at the same time, are they producing more because they are working remotely, because you're not doing transportation, you're not going back and forth, you're not dealing with people face to face. At the same time, the second question I have on top of that is, you are definitely 100% correct when it comes to individuals who need that personal communication with people.
Mm-hmm.
How is that handled from your perspective? Because the way that I handle it is try to do more face-to-face communications via Teams and things of that nature, but that is not always the resolution. So how do you handle that?
So very good question. The first question you had about the pushback, that's something that I look at as being categorized as a little bit of, resentment maybe has started to build, from looking at, I was once hybrid and now I'm being forced to be remote, or something vice versa, and I think that the good way to deal with that is to figure out and how to communicate with that person, to find out where that resentment and pushback may be rooted from. It may be just because expectations have changed of what their job, or how they perform their job. Those expectations may have been changed. In which case, now we can be a little bit more clear about the deliverables, the objectives and outcome that we expect from them. Just communication. It kind of goes back to that communication piece, being very thoughtful and clear about what your expectations are for that person. And I think from there, and from some experiences I've witnessed, is that you're able to either get that person to come around and walk back some of that resentment and pushback, or let's just be honest, sometimes remote work doesn't work for everybody, and you may not have the right person on that team or in that role, in which case now is something that another discussion that needs to take place. Are they fitting in that role? Are they comfortable in that role? Is it fulfilling at all? Those may be some different types of conversation that spawn out of that pushback that you may receive from them. Now, the second question about how do you handle that unique or that communication for the different people? Well, I think that goes back to just general management, or leading people. Everybody's different. And so that everybody's different, every engagement does not work the same for each person. They don't all respond to the same type of leadership and coaching. They don't all respond to the same. So you do have to figure out where those people are that need that little bit of extra, white glove or a little bit more empathy, a little bit more of a listening ear. Figure out who those people are on your team, and then of course set your availability around that. Because I think as you give them what they need to feel valued and to feel successful and empowered and have all the resources and intention that they need to be successful, if you position yourself to satisfy those needs, I think the work itself will start to speak for itself. You don't see that drop in productivity. One of the slides that we'll get to later is just talking about letting the work speak for itself versus having something as a task monitor. You don't need to keep tabs on adult people. In most cases, you don't need to keep tabs on adult people. You give them the resources and the support that they need, and the work will speak for itself. We've seen that in our organization. The folks that have always been productive and highly productive continue to be highly productive. The ones that were just kind of riding the clock, well, they're going to find a way to ride that clock. And eventually that work is going to tell on them because they won't have the results and have the items that are tasked to them completed. And then you deal with them on a different conversation.
Actually, Stephen, I agree with you 100%. And excellent. Thank you.
Absolutely. I hope you all don't mind. I have my mug for my water. It's Homer. So excuse me 1 second. All right. So moving on to the next item of challenge, if you will, is kind of building that trust and collaboration. And by the way, this is, I have a presentation, but I am 100% comfortable with engagement. So if you have something that you want to ask a question of, or just a thought to even share, please interrupt me. I am totally okay with that. Okay. So it can be difficult to build trust among the members of a team who may have never met face to face. And as I mentioned earlier, that transition from in office, for those people who have historically been in office, they have an existing relationship. For those people who are being onboarded in a virtual way, don't already have that emotional bank account built with their coworkers or colleagues. So as a leader, you have to create those opportunities where teams feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and ideas without fear of judgment. Now that the water cooler is gone, you'll have to create a virtual water cooler. Leaders should also encourage team members to collaborate and share their expertise, creating opportunities for team members to work together on projects. And leaders can build trust and foster that sense of teamwork and community that way. So my question is, did you have an in-office open door policy? Well, if you did, then don't change that. Keep that open door policy. Establish regular virtual informal chats, and that will help them promote some interaction with you and your employees and give team members the feeling that they have access to you. The last thing you want to be is the Wizard of Oz behind that massive green curtain. So building those trust and based relationships, to me, team members are professional. And this is what I said earlier. You don't really have to, manage their tasks. The best thing that you can do is create a neat handshake about the objectives and key results and what their action plans and tasks should be done and how they should be executed. That one-on-one meeting that we've established earlier on, that served as a great opportunity for me, for my leadership team to cover those types of conversations, gave us an opportunity to provide some feedback to them and also to share their gratitude. You always want to, of course, and you guys know this, just to give the accolades when the accolades are due. But that one-on-one opportunity is a good time to do that, where they feel like their work is being recognized. It reminds me of something I don't know how many Simpsons fans I have on the call today, but it reminds me of something with Homer Simpson in an episode where he was working from home and he decided to have this little bird tap on his keyboard to execute his function for the day while he went to the movies. And of course, during the time of him at the movies, the bird tipped over and the gas from the nuclear plant could not be vented. And of course, the nuclear meltdown was impending. So again, if employees are productive, they will be productive. Otherwise, that result of their work will show. And in this case, Homer saved the day, but he was not attentive. He was not showing and doing his work. So the result was that the nuclear plant was going to explode. So the work will tell on itself. You don't have to be that close and micromanage your employees. So my open door policy, just to talk a little bit about my experience, I always had an open door policy no matter where I worked. Someone can come in any time of day. As long as I wasn't on a call or had my door shut, they could always come in. So we embrace Teams, Microsoft Teams, very heavy in our organization. And one of the ways that we decided to create open door policy is to manage that status. And that's something that may seem like it's very small, but it's critical, because if your team is comfortable to know that when your status is green, they can engage you anytime, that builds some more of that emotional bank account with them. It helps build some of that trust, and it helps create some collaboration as well. Because now teams know that, hey, if we're working on a project or working on an item and we need to loop you in for your expertise, if your status is green, we can feel free to do that without feeling like we're encroaching upon your day. So that's something that just seems very, very small, but it has a very big impact on promoting trust and collaboration amongst employees and teams. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about productivity and engagement. It's important to create a positive work environment by encouraging teams to take breaks. John, you mentioned something earlier, about how do you do taking those time out, taking walks, things of that nature. So you encourage your team members to take breaks, go outside and prioritize their self-care. I myself, every meeting, I concluded with telling my staff, if it's a very sunny day, about the benefits of going out to getting some vitamin D and how that can be helpful for your health and your mental health, which is something that's very key and important. It helps generate and create a good, happy and uplifting attitude. And also it gives you an opportunity to take a meeting on outside, take a meeting while you're taking a walk around the block or walk around your neighborhood. So by doing that, we're promoting work-life balance, and leaders can help prevent some of that burnout and maintain the productivity over the long term. Focus and connection can help prevent some of that burnout.
I've done that, the walk and talk. That's really effective. I think just by suggesting that to a team member, like, hey, it's a beautiful day out. Let's do a walk and talk. We don't have to like share anything on our screens or whatever. Let's do it. So if you hear a car going by or birds or whatever, you know what's happening. But I think that does signal, back to one of your previous slides and items about trust, that that's an action that is demonstrating some trust to that person, like, hey, we're going to walk and talk or whatever, and let's we don't have to be behind the keyboard or whatever. So yeah
absolutely. That's the intent, is to really just kind of build that trust and demonstrate that we know that work is going to get done. We know that as long as we're seeing the results, we can do things a little bit differently. We can exercise some flexibility in how and the way we work, so that staff can feel comfortable in their role, comfortable in their space, and feeling secure that we have the support. They have the support of leaders in being able to execute their jobs however they see fit to get it done. Okay.
I had something come up. In fact, it was just this morning. And it somewhat is like around remote teams, and it's somewhat around, I would call it just like business agility, where like we drifted from like how we normally would run our stand-up, because we had a couple of team members out. We shifted, like on the fly, we shifted and did it a different way. And it turned out to be like a very positive change in what we did. And so the point I'm getting at too is like, it's sort of like the open door policy and leading in a way where like you show some vulnerability, you show like maybe a thinking in front of everybody, and that you're not afraid to like, hey, we tried something, this was pretty good. Let's think about maybe we like make a change in how we do that based on how this went today. Maybe we make a change in how we do things in our stand-ups going forward. So let's think about that or whatever. So like, again, trying to drive like some engagement with people,
right,
and showing like vulnerability, like you don't have to have it all planned out, and let it sort of evolve that way. Seemed to be like that was like a little bit of a spark today for me, at least with my team. I was like, okay. Sometimes you'll fall flat on your face with it if it goes poorly, but when it goes well, it's great, right?
No, I agree with you. I think that's why it's important to create that safe space for opinions and thoughts and ideas to be shared, and without that judgment. Like you said, you're thinking in real time, you're figuring things out in real time, and you have the trust of your team, and the team has a trust of you as a leader, that's a comfortable, safe space to do that. Not everything that you throw against the board is going to stick, but the things that do, now all of that kind of happen organically. And I think that's where some of the productivity and the engagement that a lot of leaders may fear goes away when you go from an in-office to remote. That's a way to show or demonstrate that organic, behavior that's typically done in the office can foster and flourish in a remote environment, as long as you create that comfortable and that safe space to do so. So that's a very good observation. And that's something that I know that I incorporate as much as I can in my own teams, and encourage that same with my leadership team. So one thing that I think is from some of my research and reading is just making the environment familiar. You know, as you transition from in office to work remotely, you make some of those things, your environment seem familiar, so you get an understanding of what makes sense to each other as a team, others' behaviors. You know, because you're working from home now, so you may be a different mode of kind of more relaxed in the way that you approach work, even though you're getting it done, but you may just be in a different type of mode when you're doing so. And that helps to me, for me to understand and help prevent where there's distractions from working from home and any potential misunderstandings of doing that. So again, you exercise and prioritize flexibility. You keep that in mind, because we know things can change and shift unpredictably. No one saw 2020 coming, but now that we've experienced it, we have an understanding, or we should be moving forward with an understanding that things can change very quickly for us. So we have to be flexible to do so. And of course, again, driving and setting clear priorities of what's most important to you and your organization and your department and those missions. And then, of course, just discuss those deliverables. So those are things that are familiar when you're in the office that can be applied to some familiarity when you're working remotely. My own personal experience, we encourage our staff to invest in their setup. You know, in the early days, everyone made a mad dash to the house, and you grabbed what you could and you set up an office the best that you could, because it was more of a response than any kind of planning. Well, now that you are either in a permanent remote posture, or you're working for an organization that has been remote, investing in the setup can help keep that productivity going, because now you're getting into working into a space that you know is made and built for work. You have all of the items around you. You have your monitors. You have a very comfortable chair. You have a ergonomic keyboard where it's needed. You have a light for your Zoom and your Teams meetings. So a purposeful, thought out investment in your setup can help foster some of that productivity and engagement. One of the Yes, sir.
I do have a quick question. Can you provide examples, meaning more than one scenarios where it was not positive, but more on the negative, on something that you experienced, so that we can all understand how to navigate that environment?
Sure. So one particular situation came to mind, whereas as I was saying, that mad dash to the office, from the office to home, was not an easy transition for everyone. We had one particular employee who just did not adopt to that very well. One of the things I talked about earlier is managing the status of your teams so that people can know when you're available and they can engage you. This person just refused to make themselves available. They would sign into Teams, and instead of showing themselves as available or busy, they would just simply change their status to offline. So it looked like they were just not there. And, you know, when they were questioned about it, like, why do you do that? Well, it's because I'm working on things and I don't want to be disturbed. Well, that particular person's manager said, well, Teams has a busy option and a do not disturb option. Why not use those instead of just showing or appearing to be offline and not making yourself available for other teamwork members or even that person's manager? So the action from that was this employee decided, okay, well, I won't just show that I'm offline. I'll just show that I'm on do not disturb. And they would be on do not disturb all day long. So again, the manager approached this employee to say, well, are you truly working on something that you can't be disturbed all day long? Well, Not really. So that was a very negative experience for both the manager and that employee. That employee ultimately ended up leaving the organization. And reasons I believe is because there just was not a very comfortable posture or work setup for them. They didn't know how to continue to make themselves available, as well as show that they were actually getting the work done and the results being produced. It could have been just from a point of just unwillingness, because we did ask and we did try to find out the root cause of that behavior from that individual, but we weren't offered up a lot of information. So ultimately, we just think that that person just did not feel comfortable in this remote work capacity. And so very shortly after going to remote, they left the organization. I don't know that there's a magic or bullet or an appropriate or response that's accurate when you have someone who's just not willing to participate and grow and be productive in that remote capacity. If a person's just not willing, there's not much you can do. The only thing that you can do is just have some conversations around and this is just my thoughts now, have some conversations around maybe this role, you've outgrown this role. Maybe there's something else that you may need to do, or maybe there's something else another role we can put you in so that you can feel comfortable and be willing to participate in the new work environment. That's one example that happened pretty immediately after we went to a remote capacity or remote posture. Later, we had a negative experience where the employee just was not engaged anymore. They stopped talking in the staff meetings. They stopped corresponding with coworkers and colleagues. They just became less engaging when it came to status reports during staff meeting. And I think this person just kind of grew unhappy of being in the remote capacity itself. This is not the same person who felt isolated, though. That's the interesting part about it. This is a totally different person who was one of our workhorses, if you will. A person who was really admired and respected by their colleagues, but just slowly over time just became disengaged, and there did not seem a way to bring them back. We gave them other projects, that were highly visible projects, gave them some handoff to items that required some collaboration with their coworkers and their colleagues. And these things just were not received very well. So every experience is not going to be good. And what to do about it is just really going to be unique to, of course, each case. But yeah, we experienced a number of people who just did not have a positive experience with working remote, no matter how hard we tried. We just could not seem to satisfy those people in that particular role.
Stephen, to be completely 100% honest with you, both of your examples were exactly examples that has occurred. Literally.
Wow.
And I cannot say anything more than I am very happy that you expressed those, because now I speak to my colleagues in regards to this, and we all say, well, we don't know what happened. But now I can say it's not just us.
Right.
So thank you.
No, absolutely. And, things change for employees. What gives them job satisfaction or enjoyment or excitement about what the work is, it can change over time. And particularly that can be sped up when the environment changes, because what they initially were hired to do in the environment they were working in, maybe that was a good mixture for them. But then remote came into play, and that wasn't a good mixture. I had one employee leave our team because they felt like they were just not, doing exciting work. And part of that was because they didn't see and got and have a chance to go to lunch and talk with the other colleagues while they were at work talking about work items and just kind of transition to other things. So just because the environment changed, that particular person left because they just were not fulfilled. And I was happy that he shared that in a very transparent way, because that allowed me as a leader of my group is to figure out ways to avoid that in the future. You know, what activities can we do? What things can we do just from a virtual way that can help satisfy people who have the same desire in work? And one of those ways was just kind of create some, fun in the workplace, because that's something that causes or rewards us with engagement from all employees. Everybody likes to have some type of fun in the workplace. So just simple things as, one of our staff meetings, we had a your favorite mug day, and everyone was to show their favorite mug for that staff meeting and talk a little bit about why it was your favorite. So something that was outside of the norm that you don't typically do in the workplace, in office, we were able to do virtually. Other things, of course, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to speak on that. We have implemented that as well. We have Let's Everybody Have Fun Thursday. And get together on Thursdays. But it has been identified that has not been exactly, you have individuals who are not, you have workhorses, as we classify them, including myself, I'm a workhorse. But then you have individuals who are happy-go-lucky. So how do you put those two together when you have people who are not into all of that versus individuals who are into that?
Right.
And you try to force them to do it. It's like you're fighting each other. And that is what is making the issue. It's
absolutely
not trying to be wrong. It happened that way.
Right. And that's a very, very good point to bring up. And I'm glad you said that, because you're right. What works for me may not work for you. Some people may like one thing and others may loathe it. But I think one way that we were able to help kind of create a balance is take some suggestions from everyone about what's the activity, or what is the special, event that we want to do for the next month's staff meeting. Allow each person to be able to offer up some idea. That way it's capturing the landscape of the different desires and likes of your team. And it's not just, let's say, me coming up with what I believe to be fun, because, I find most things that some folks don't think are very funny, I find it hilarious. So I can't inject impose my humor onto everyone else. So getting that feedback, and it kind of goes back to communication, feeling safe environment for staff to be able to share their thoughts and ideas that can be applied for everyone. And it gives everyone the opportunity to see what they want to see in those types of activities. So it may be crazy hats. Some might like that. Some may hate that. One thing that I do is I start each staff meeting, with a song selection, just to kind of get the energy going up for that day. And I ask the staff for requests. What song do you want to hear? We have a very diverse team. We have team members from all over the world. And so we want to take in account some of the cultural backgrounds that our team is made up of, and be able to have something that they can relate to as well. So we get those requests, we get those ideas from the teams, so that everyone's likes and desires and things could be represented.
I love the song.
Stephen, you are really impressing me. I'm not going to sit here and lie, because my wife does that now. She tells me we have a song we play every week for her people. And I said, I don't want to do that. But now you make me think I should be doing something like that, more so than being oppressed about it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, embrace it.
Yeah, I agree. I used to do that a lot when we were in person and we had like a Bluetooth speaker and
Mm.
we would like pass it on like to the next, someone different would pick the song to start the meeting, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, we had
Yeah.
like some really good moments from that. And I felt like I tried to do that when we started going remote, and it just seemed like people, like the audio was so compromised that
Mm.
I don't know. Yeah, so I stopped, but I think I'm like Dwayne. I think I'm gonna try it again and restart that again, because it was a very positive thing. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So what another thing we've done, I've dabbled with this too, is letting other people run the meeting.
That, John, I'm glad you said that. That is something that I have as a note to just suggest now.
Yeah.
As Dwayne's question came about, we would do the same thing. We would say, okay, particular topics. Who has something, a project or something that they've just finished, or a particular topic they think would be valuable to the team. And we would take care of the initial business very quickly, condensed meeting with that piece, and then allow another team member to run and present during the meeting. That's part of showing some of that gratitude and giving those accolades to the employees who do well and do some good work. They want to showcase it to not just their manager or the leaders, they want to showcase it to everyone. So that was something that was really well received. And I'll be very honest and transparent. We kind of tapered off from that as our team changed over the last years or so. And so that's something I have as a note to kind of get back to, being able to just say, hey, you run the meeting. I'm always running the meeting. You run the meeting and you tell us what's important to you all, or what you have accomplished, or, what do you want to share today? So I think that's a way to engage, promote some of that engagement, as well as some of that trust as well, with your teams,
Yeah, I think
and be able to satisfy.
like as a leader too, like to make fun of yourself too. Like you're like for me, like I've said this a few times, I'm like, I am so tired of hearing my voice. I have to hear someone else's voice, So.
Right.
Read.
Yeah, that's so those are some of the things that have worked for me, and for others that I've kind of talked with some of my colleagues and counterparts in other areas, other agencies. These are things that have worked for them. So definitely encourage you to do the same thing. Which really brings me to one of the last slides here, is talking about the technology and the tools for leadership of working remote. So as leaders consider and take on the posture of working remote, we have to consider using tools to not only just track members' performance or progress, but to help the improvement and ensure that everyone meeting their goals and their deadlines. Most importantly, though, leaders must implement and establish technology tools that support the work teams. Tools to include communication, collaboration, such as video conference, messaging, cloud storage, project and task management apps. And I don't have to, I'm sure, tell that to this group, but I know you all know some of the popular tools, but to empower and make sure that we have a successful connection with those is, one I mentioned already, Microsoft Teams, big one with Microsoft Teams. Zoom is a very good platform that can help support the work remote and your team's collaboration. OneDrive, Google Drive, online storage period, Slack, and DocuSign. Just thinking about our implementation from our experiences with some of these tools, we had a number of them. We had a little bit of luck on our side, I will say, going into 2020, because we implemented two tools that prepared us not unlike anything else, really. One of the tools was a electronic signature platform. We use SignNow. I actually purchased SignNow in October of 2019. And, I reached out to different business units and saying, hey, here in IT, we're going to implement this electronic signature platform because there's so many documents that we communicate to you all that just, it goes through the interdepartmental mail and it needs your wet signature, you're not always at your desk. So to help keep that bottleneck from happening for us, or that roadblock, we're going to implement electronic signature. So we engage as many departments and business units as we can, and no bites. Interest, but no one wanted to take the journey. And so we did in IT. And thankfully, when 2020 came about and the shutdown was occurred, well, my team was already familiar enough with SignNow to be able to create some training, just-in-time training, if you will, for the rest of those business units that we had told them that was coming, and showed interest, but just were not ready to move forward with it. We were able to shape up some training to help them take a sprint and get ready for that electronic signature. Because no one could come into the office, you would have items that needed to be signed so that the business process could continue to move forward, and the goal and business of the agency can be accomplished. So allowing the departments, allowing us to take them on that journey and train them up in a very, very sprint fashion, allowed us to be able to keep signature piece, that workflow, that business workflow or work process moving forward. Now, we did have a few roadblocks. Being a state agency, we had a few roadblocks from government red tape about what can you keep or produce in electronic signature versus having to have a wet signature. Well, thankfully, as a team effort, we looked to our legal department to say, find that out for us and let these departments know where that flexibility allows, where that opportunity allows for them to be able to implement, well, electronic signature. So as some of departments and agencies I've spoke with and heard my colleagues who never even entertained the idea of electronic signature and had to figure out a way to make an in-person signature take place, we were ahead of the game on that. And I did share some of that success with them so that that can hopefully influence them to bring about something it seemed to be very, minuscule change, but it has very big impact on keeping your business working and flowing when no one is supposed to come into the office. One of the others that we implemented and had a little bit of luck with was our conferencing. We implemented Zoom conferencing and Zoom webinar. It came out of a need because we were spending so much in conference calls that we wanted to do something just to drive down the cost, really. But as we finished our implementation in January of 2020, well, you know what happened in March? Everything shut down. So our organization host public hearings. And of course, in a shutdown fashion, you cannot have all those people together and huddle up in one space. So thankfully, with our implementation of Zoom webinar and meeting, we were able to take those in-person meetings, those public hearings, and move them into webinars. Keeping in mind that when we had it in person, we may have only gotten maybe 25, 35 people on a regular basis. When we implemented the webinar, now we were getting hundreds of people attending simply because of the convenience of it. Let's take the shutdown out of the equation where, you're keeping people from having to drive miles or hours to get to a public hearing to share their feedback, to saying, hey, now you can do it right there at your home and in the comfortable of your slippers, your bunny slippers, and sipping your coffee. You can give us that feedback without having to leave the house. So that webinar was extremely successful for us. And we also allowed our staff to be able to host meetings by using Zoom as well. One other challenge I want to share is we encountered was our telephones. Because we were all working remotely and this, the shutdown occurred, well, that didn't stop the business from happening. So we had constituents and customers calling the agency, but no one was there. So these calls were going unanswered. And not everyone had an agency cell phone that they can forward their calls to. So one of the things that we decided to create a plan and action behind very quickly was moving our phone system from the traditional phone system to a cloud PBX. And of course, that allowed us a lot of flexibility, a lot of scalability and allowed our calls from our constituents and customers to be answered while staff are working from home. That was probably one of the better decisions that we've made, because we can carry that forward from just responding as a response to the pandemic to just being ready for any emergency or any disruption, and being able to have our business can continue to be carried on and executed for the customers and the citizens of Georgia. So some of the other tools that we implemented were Teams, of course, as I mentioned, Monday.com, and we looked and implemented some AI tools to help staff with just generating, communications in a very easy way, and then look for ways to automate. One of the things that we suggested to our business units was, if you've not looked and done an analysis of your work processes, do that. Figure out ways that you can make this more streamlined, and that it can be adopted into a digital execution or method or mode. That was something that was very, very key, because though we were all working remote, not all of our processes went through an analysis to adopt a remote mode of transportation, if you will. So that's just something that we continue to do to this day, is we look at these business units, we meet with our business units, and just discuss what the work processes are, so that we can modify and make changes so that they can be digital in process now. All right, so the last thing we're going to conclude. And as I come to the close here, just a few do's and don'ts as you listen to some of the lessons learned that I experienced and some of the best practices. Some of the do's are: set those clear priorities and objectives so that everyone on your team can focus on what's important. Be inclusive. Even if some are in the office, hold all team meetings online to be fair to everyone. Reflect on your biases and predispositions. I mean, are there team members that are not feeling like they're getting a fair shake? Figure out who those people are and identify ways to connect with them and engage with them. Some of the don'ts: don't be rigid. We talked about the future and how unpredictable it can be, and we all experienced that back in 2020. And don't ignore signs of stress from your team. Exercise some empathy. We talked about how people can become burned out or feel isolated. Make that a priority. Make self-care a priority for you and your team. And don't forget about the fun. Enjoy connecting with your team members. Bring some playfulness to the work environment. And as I close, I want to end with one of my favorite teams and how they accomplished the goal. Specifically thinking about if you're new to leading a remote team, or you're in an organization that's thinking about it and you see all these challenges and you wonder, is this even something that we can do? This is my answer to that.
There doesn't sound right. I just wanted to check.
Oh, I'm sorry. You didn't hear that? Couldn't hear
No,
it?
I didn't hear it. Nah.
Okay, sorry. That's a scene from Ghostbusters. And what they talk about is they accomplished this goal because it was easy, because they had the tools and they had the talent. So that's what my message is making sure that you stay up to date with the new strategies and tools that are available to support remote work, and with keeping your skills sharp and knowing what's out there, and knowing that you have the talents of different employees and team members you can build and create your teams with. You can accomplish the goal of having a successful remote work environment. Thank you all.
Thank you, Stephen. I think we'll open up again for questions.
Absolutely.
Do have a question, Stephen. Again, I have provided you with your accolades because you definitely provided me with a lot of information that I liked. I'm a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, but not Boston. But
Don't do that to yourself.
Overall, what is your ultimate thought? I know you provide your closing statement, but what is your ultimate thought? Is working remote something that is, I mean, we know that it is what it is now.
Right.
But what is your thought about working remote? Because currently in my environment, we have individuals, even though the business platform is designed for remote work, I'm in IT, as we all are, but people like to see people. So how do you see things being more, are you for remote, or are you just adjusting, or do you like it? I mean, what is your thought?
That is a very good question, Dwayne, and I can appreciate that question. I often tell people I love remote. I will have to go back to the office kicking and screaming like a 2-year-old. I absolutely love I absolutely love it because of some of the benefits that I said, about the commute being cut and just being able to focus on self-care, whereas that's not something I could do in the office. And you brought up a good point about platforms and your technology piece, making sure that that supports the remote. And sometimes it takes looking at what you may have as your main or mission critical application and deciding if you've outgrown it or if there's a way to augment it or make some integrations or take place to make it successful for being a tool that you all can use remotely. But I'm all for it. I think there is some unique challenges for those who typically are not native to remote environments and had to kind of transition to that. I think there's some things that I've learned just from talking to other people who have gone through the same transition. One gentleman I was talking to at my son's party, and he was onboarded to his organization remotely during the pandemic. But one thing that they end up doing is going back to those employees and creating just a regular out of the office engagement for them. Nothing really work related. It's just something as simple as happy hour. And I think those are some very good tactics and activities that you can do to support the remote work environment and build some cohesiveness to your team. That is something that kind of really stuck with me because I came back to my team the following week and just did a survey to find out who on my team would be interested in that. And overwhelmingly, everyone was interested in doing something like that on a regular basis, whether it been, twice a year or just the holidays or once a quarter, creating an opportunity to see each other in person, just to build that emotional bank account, if you will, and just create some true team cohesiveness. But I am absolutely a fan of remote. I wish I had known about it some years and years ago. But I think you can be very successful with it. I think organizations can really benefit from it because one of the things you mentioned is, when employees are working remote, are they working over, or what's actually transpiring? And we're finding that staff are happy about putting a little bit extra time in because they don't have to spend that time on the road now going home with their long commutes. They can put that into a little bit of extra time for work. So the organization benefits from that. And they understand, of course, we're making their health, their self-care a priority, but so they don't mind giving up another hour of work to get something done just to get it ahead or get something across the finish line. So I think it works well, and I am definitely in support of it. And moving forward, I'm going to do as much as I can to learn and incorporate new and other proven activities and concepts into my team so that we can continue to grow as a remote unit.
I got into a pretty good debate the other day just yesterday with someone that he he's a leader of a development team, and he's remote. His team's remote, but then he's been called onto this task force where he's traveling now like every other week, and he's working on site on the West Coast. He's here in Atlanta. He goes to the West Coast every other week and is on site 8 to 5 Tuesday through Thursday. And he came at me pretty strong. He was just like, you know what? I don't know if I'm buying the whole remote thing anymore after having these like 3 days, like in it, like we are like, I'm recognizing times at which, like, when I can just walk and be like face to face and ask a question, I get an answer, we go back and forth, where when I'm remote, I'm like, I'm sending a note and then I'm waiting. They send me a note back and they're waiting. And my debate with them was, why don't you just talk? I mean, isn't there a song, Let's Just Talk, right? Khalid. Like, and I so we got into that. He's just like, but we don't, like, we just send, I send an email, and that's, like, well, maybe you need to just recognize the moments where, like, you should click on Teams and do like an instant video and just be like, hey, I got a quick question for you. If like, you generally know when something's going to have like some back and forth, like 2, 3, 4, 5 back and forth or whatever to get, to the end point. But it was a pretty good debate. He's just like, I hear you, I agree, and we know that, but human nature is that I'm probably just gonna like send the email, and it's just gonna be slower. So
Right.
it was interesting. So
No,
I do think calling people, sorry to interrupt, Stephen.
Yeah, no.
I do think calling people is still a little, like, it's still a little weird. Like, if they just get the notification, like, oh, this call is coming in, like, it still seems sudden. So sending some note to, like, precursor it, and then, okay, let's hop on a call. I think that still seems to be okay. But just like calling them and then, expecting them to pick up. I think maybe that's because of it. You're like, okay, I called them. I expect them to pick up because I called, when maybe they're not looking at their computer right now. But
Yeah. Shanika, and I'm glad you did interject, because it kind of segues into one of the things I was going to say is, yeah, the way we communicate may have to change. We're so used to doing email and just getting responses and having long discussions in email, which is something I cannot stand, by the way. So I am quick to pick up a call or just to send a Teams call, but I do notice that a lot of my teams will send me a message to say, hey, do you have a quick minute? Even though I'm in a green status, they will say, do you have a quick minute? And it's almost like they're wanting me not to treat them as a spam call, asking about, how's your auto insurance, auto warranty? They kind of treat it like that. Hey, it's me that's calling, and this is actually something that's real, and I need some attention with it. So I think just that courtesy is very good. I think it allows the person who has the question to get answered feel like they're going to get some undivided attention to address whatever that is. But I don't think there's anything wrong with using all of the tools that are in our toolbox, whether it's email, whether it's the phone, whether it's messaging, or whether it's just a quick virtual call. I love calling my team members quickly with just my face being on there and not just being a regular voice or audio call. I enjoy showing them, it's me, and it gives them a chance to see my smiling face, and I get to see their smiling face. And so I think sometimes that helps, again, foster some of that trust and that engagement, is just being able to use all the tools that are our toolbox. All right. Any other questions there, or comments, or thoughts that I can help in answer?
Well, I do have a comment, and I'm going to say it short. I hate to be the person who steps out on a whim and say these things, but I really appreciate you taking this time and providing this information, because things that you brought up are things that I actually literally go through And it gives me a different insight. I'm not alone.
Right.
So when you're not alone, you kind of feel a lot better about yourself and the scenario. So thank you very much for your presentation. 100% kudos. And I'm there. I'm definitely going to follow you because we're going to become friends because we're going to definitely have some things going on. So
absolutely. Absolutely. It is my pleasure. And, you know, I definitely thank you all for the invitation and just even allowing me to talk about some of my experiences. You know, you mentioned something about not being alone, and I think that's key. You know, when you're going through some transitions and things, and you realize that others have gone through it, well, you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. You know, you can partner with folks, pick their brain, find out what worked well for them and what did not work so well, and see if those are things that you can improve on that and have it successful in your environment. But we're all a team, a big global team when it comes to technology. We're all on the same team when it comes to that. And I am always happy to partner and help and share and seek advice and direction from some of the same technology professionals that I like to surround myself with and engage with.
Hey, slow it down, slow it down. I see Victor's about to come off mute and like ask you to be part of like the national conference. So you better don't take that back. Like hit rewind and don't put yourself out there.
I don't know if there's an erase on this thing.
He's getting ready. He's gonna pounce on you, man. He's on
lasso, you. I'm ready to lasso.
Oh man, Dwayne, thank you for being so engaged this evening. These meetings are always so much more enjoyable. The content is always fantastic, and just like tonight, I mean, Stephen, your content was terrific, and you know, it is comforting to hear, you know, your personal experiences and like what we're doing, what things we're trying to do, and things that work and don't work, and I mean, it's helpful. It's what Shanika and Victor and I wanted this whole series on leadership to be like, to hear other leaders, like what they're personally going through and how it's going. So we very much appreciate it. And beyond just tonight, the topic, I would say thank you for choosing to work where you work and the things that you're doing, you know, clean air, clean water, clean land. I mean, all of us on the screen right here, I think would say thank you, kudos to you for like doing good things for us so that we have all that. So anyways, yeah, getting a little sappy there, but that's all good stuff. So thank you.
Somebody's got to do it, John, and I'm happy to support the teams that do it.
yeah. I mean, it's you know, it does go a little bit into, you know, the whole remote world too. Like you talked about how people, they want more now. Yeah. Like they want to learn, they want good, you know, satisfaction in their jobs. They want the relationships, but they want to feel good about what they're doing. They want to have purpose. So like when we see like, that's where you work, that's what your cause is. I mean, that's like a great purpose. And that's a very strong thing that we hear over and over. And, you know, what we do, I mean, we find people jobs. So I hear it all the time. Like I want to have a good purpose in what I'm doing every day. So, so anyways, yeah, thank you. Thank you for that.
I will share one last thing too. During the shutdown, you know, we have the air protection branch as part of the Environmental Protection Division. And so we monitor the air quality for the metro area. And we had such low evidence of pollutants, and the air was so clean and clear during the shutdown that we recorded some very good numbers. And it's like, well, this is a good justification to push for more remote work here in the metro area, because the quality of our air has improved, you know, drastically during those 11, 12, 13 months.
Yeah. Awesome stuff. So, and because I do like to multi-purpose things, our meeting next month, the topic is on purpose. So that guy in the guy in the lower, he's not, I bet he could probably turn his video on if he really wanted to, but Edwin is going to be our speaker next month. And the topic is on purpose. So there he is. See if
There he
so I can usually get him. If I twist his arm a little bit, he'll cave for me. So Edwin, thank you for joining us tonight. Next month should be great. Tonight was great. Thank you, Stephen.
Well, I hope to be able to participate and at least sit in and watch that myself.
Please do. Yeah, we'd love.
I love
yeah,
that.
we'd love that. Please do.
Absolutely.
Stephen.
But I hope that I can be able to present something to you that you'll be impressed. Wow. So
Oh, I'm
this group
sure.
is a great group.
Yeah. Keep me engaged. I'm going to start following the group on LinkedIn for sure. So, and I'm already following John. So I'm certain I will keep my eye open for some of the topics that I have a large, wide range of interests. So I'm sure just about anything is going to pique my interest for sure. So going to jump in and participate wherever I can.
Sounds great. Yeah. So as I just dropped in the channel, again, links to social media. So mine's Victor, Stephen, also John, links to the conference, also recap video from last year. And then, yeah, ways to stay connected with the chapter. So thanks everyone for joining. Thank you again, Stephen, for sharing with us. And I think the conversation was good.
All right. Thank you all so much again for having me.
Have a good evening, everyone.